I need to tell you about the worst advice I ever followed. It's the one every guru, every life coach loves to repeat. Just push through it. Discipline beats motivation every time. And for a while, I believed that. I thought if I was in a slump, the solution was to just force myself. White knuckle my way back to productivity. So I tried it. I set alarms, made schedules, told myself I was weak for not being able to just do the thing. And you know what happened? I made it worse. Way worse. Because here's what nobody tells you about ruts. They don't respond to force. They respond to something else entirely. Something I didn't understand until I stopped trying to fight my way out and started paying attention to how I fell in. And that's where this gets interesting. Let me paint you a picture. There's this thing that happens about 3 days before a rut really takes hold. I didn't notice it for years, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It's this weird fog that settles over everything. Not like depression, not like burnout, more like numbness, where things you normally care about suddenly feel optional, like someone turned down the volume on your life. I remember the first time I caught it happening in real time. I was supposed to meet a friend for coffee, someone I actually wanted to see, and as I'm getting ready, I just stopped. Stood there in the middle of my room thinking, do I really need to go? Not because I was tired, not because something came up. I just didn't feel like it anymore. And here's the kicker. I knew that was a red flag. I knew that canceling plans over nothing was a bad sign, but I did it anyway. Because in that moment, it felt justified. That's when I realized something. Ruts don't announce themselves with some dramatic breakdown. They show up disguised as reasonable decisions. I'll just stay in tonight. I'll start tomorrow. This one thing doesn't really matter. And each time you make one of those calls, you're not just skipping something. You're training yourself that skipping is an option. Okay, so here's where most people go wrong. They think the problem is the symptom, the lack of motivation, the tiredness, the I don't feel like it. So they try to fix the symptom. They drink more coffee, watch motivational videos, make vision boards. But that's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone, because the real problem isn't what you're feeling. It's what you're doing before you start feeling it. Let me explain. A few months back, I tracked my patterns for like 3 weeks straight. Every time I felt myself slipping, I wrote down what happened in the 48 hours before it. And I found something wild. It wasn't random at all. There was always a moment where I made a small compromise, where I told myself something didn't matter, where I let something slide just this once. Like, I'd skip my morning routine because I stayed up too late. Then I'd feel off all day, so I'd order food instead of cooking. Then I'd feel sluggish, so I'd skip the gym. Then I'd feel guilty, so I'd numb out with TV. And each step felt fine in isolation. Each decision made sense by itself, but they were connected. One small compromise led to another, and another, until I was living a completely different life than the one I'd built just days earlier. And here's the thing that really messed with me. I wasn't even aware it was happening. My brain had this incredible ability to rationalize every single choice while completely ignoring the pattern they were creating. It was like watching a car slowly drift into the wrong lane, except I was the one driving and pretending I wasn't. So you're probably wondering, okay, cool story, but how do you actually stop this? And I'm gonna tell you, but not yet. Because if I give you the answer right now, you'll nod along, maybe screenshot this, and then forget about it the next time you're actually in this situation. I need you to understand why this happens first, because without that, nothing I tell you will stick. See, your brain has this thing it does when you're building good habits. It creates what I call identity anchors. These are the small rituals or behaviors that remind you who you are, who you're trying to be. Maybe it's going to the gym. Maybe it's reading before bed. Maybe it's just keeping your space clean. Whatever it is, when you do it consistently, it becomes proof to yourself that you're the kind of person who shows up. But here's the problem. Those anchors, they're fragile. You can spend weeks building them up, feeling solid, feeling like you finally figured it out. And then one bad weekend can shatter all of them. Not because you're weak, not because you lack discipline, but because you stopped defending them. I learned this the hard way last summer. I had this solid routine going. Waking up at 6 a.m., working out, getting my work done early. I felt unstoppable. Then I went on a trip with friends. Just a long weekend, 4 days. And I told myself, it's fine. I'll just relax for a few days and get back to it when I'm home. Except when I got home, I didn't get back to it. I'd sleep through my alarm and think, well, I'm already off schedule. Might as well sleep in. I'd skip the gym and think, I'll go tomorrow. One more day won't hurt. And before I knew it, 2 weeks had passed and I was a completely different person. Not because the trip broke me, but because I stopped protecting the identity I'd built. I let the anchors dissolve without even noticing. And that's when I understood something crucial. The rut doesn't attack you when you're weak. It attacks you when you think you're strong enough to skip the things that made you strong. All right, so here's what changed everything for me. I stopped trying to prevent ruts altogether. Instead, I started building what I call tripwires. These are tiny, non-negotiable markers that tell me when I'm drifting. Not after I'm already stuck, while it's happening. For example, if I hit snooze twice in 1 week, tripwire. If I cancel plans for no real reason, tripwire. If I start watching YouTube past midnight, tripwire. None of these things are disasters by themselves, but they're signals. Early warnings that I'm starting to compromise. And here's the critical part. When a tripwire goes off, I don't try to overhaul my entire life. I don't make some big dramatic comeback plan. I just do one thing differently the next day. That's it. One small act of resistance. One tiny proof to myself that I'm still in control. Maybe I get out of bed the second my alarm goes off. Maybe I go for a 10-minute walk. Maybe I just clean my desk. Doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that I interrupt the drift. Because once you drift for too long, it becomes your new normal. Your brain recalibrates. And climbing back feels impossible. But if you catch it early, while it's still just a drift and not a free fall, you can course correct with almost no effort. And look, if you're sitting here thinking, okay, I get it, I need to catch this early. But what do I actually build once I stop the drift? Well, I made a whole video breaking down exactly how to become the person you want to be in 21 days. Not some motivational fluff. Actual practical steps for building an identity that doesn't collapse the second life gets hard. There's a card popping up right now, or you can find it in the description below. But for now, there's one more thing I need to tell you. And this is probably the most important part. You know that feeling when you're in a rut and someone tells you to just snap out of it, and it makes you want to scream because if you could just snap out of it, you obviously would. Yeah, that's because they're missing the point. You can't snap out of a rut, but you can prevent needing to. The whole game is about recognizing when you're one decision away from starting the slide. It's about seeing that moment, that exact moment, when you're about to tell yourself something doesn't matter. And instead of blindly agreeing, you ask, wait, does it actually not matter? Or am I just tired? Because most of the time, when you're honest with yourself, you'll realize it does matter. And that awareness alone is sometimes enough to stop you from making the choice that starts the spiral. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is easy. It's not. Some days you're going to hit the tripwire and ignore it anyway. Some days you're going to drift and not even care. That's fine. You're human after all. But the difference between someone who spends weeks stuck in a rut and someone who doesn't, it's not willpower. It's not discipline. It's awareness. It's knowing what you're looking at when it starts and refusing to let it grow just because you're too tired to fight it today. So the truth is that the rut isn't stronger than you. It's just more patient. It'll wait for you to let your guard down, to convince yourself that one compromise won't hurt, to believe that you'll start fresh Monday. But if you can catch it, if you can see it forming and do something, anything to push back, you win. Not because you're perfect, but because you showed up when it mattered. And that's the only thing that ever really matters.